Not all relationships end on the best of terms. This is 32-year-old Britney Barron and her husband, 33-year-old Armando Barron, who live in New Hampshire and they have 3 kids together and been married for the past few years. Britney worked as a machine operator for a company called Teleflex, which is a medical supply company out of Joffrey, New Hampshire. That was when she also met this man, 25-year-old Jonathan Emerald, who worked for the same company, in which they developed an emotional relationship with one another, to a point where they would send text messages and Snapchats to one another, and at times where they was at work would sneak kisses to one another. Britney felt that her and Jonathan's relationship had gotten to a point where she didn't want the relationship with her husband anymore, so she made a request to her husband that she wanted a divorce and that she didn't love him anymore. So Armando was trying to figure out where all this came from, and so one day he decided to go through his wife's phone, and when he did so, that's when he found all the text messages and Snapchat messages that they were sending to one another. In a matter of minutes, he had hatched a plan that would get revenge on everybody he felt had crossed him, and the first step was getting his kids at the house, so he had them go next door to the grandmother's house. He would confront his wife about the text messages, at the same time was brutally attacking her. During the attack, he would choke her as well as punch her in the face several times so that way she wouldn't scream out and call for help. Britney thought her life was over until Armando stopped and had told her to get in the car and that he needed her cell phone as well too. He would then drive Britney over to Annette State Park, which is located over in Rindge, New Hampshire, which is north of the Massachusetts state border. Now, once they got to the park, Armando would use Britney's cell phone to text Jonathan to convince him to come to the park by pretending to be her. Now, Britney would go on to say that she was hoping that Jonathan would not answer his text messages, but instead he actually responded to it and then showed up later on. Now, Jonathan would shortly arrive at the park shortly after texting back and forth, and when he got there, he was expecting to see Britney and they go ahead and do their thing, not realizing that Armando was there as well, in which Armando had ambushed him and attacked him. Now, during the attack, Armando would tell Jonathan this is what happens when you mess around with another man's wife, and that there were time periods where he would tell Britney to get involved as well, so that way she got her hands dirty. All because that he wanted her to see this is what happens when you sneak around on somebody. Now, once the attack was over with, Armando would take Jonathan and throw him in the trunk of his own car, in which Jonathan would reply back saying that I thought he was going to let me live because I just thought there was a beatdown, in which Armando would reply back by saying, I lied, and then shot him 3 times. Armando would then have Britney drive Jonathan's car, in which they would take both cars and drive 200 miles north of New Hampshire to a campsite that was secluded. And on the way there, they had bulk supplies such as lighter fluid, cleaning supplies, a tarp, and a shovel. Once they got to the campsite, Armando would take anything that belonged to Jonathan's and put it in the burn pile and burn it, and as well as destroy his phone. He would then tell Britney to take off Jonathan's head so that way he couldn't be identified, and then he took her to a secondary campsite where he told her that she need to go ahead and get rid of the body and he'd be back within a week. So while Britney was working on getting rid of all the evidence, 2 hunters had came across her camping site and had told her this was a restricted area, all because there was a bear baiting site that was not too far away. And so they went ahead and left and had reported her to the Fish and Game wardens to notify them about the violation. So when Fish and Game had got there, they had notified Britney that she had to leave and go ahead and pack all her things up. But in the process of her packing everything up, they noticed the black eyes that she had as well as the bruises around her neck. And then after carefully looking around, they had noticed a body that was wrapped in the tarp. So after escorting Britney out of the area, they went ahead and put handcuffs on her and then notified state troopers about what they had saw. Now, once arrested, Britney would go ahead and tell the officers about what all had happened and that she was an unwilling participant in this whole entire matter because it was her husband that did the killing and not her, and that he made her under threat of death to destroy all the evidence. So with all the evidence and his wife's testimony, Armando was shortly arrested afterwards. Britney would make a deal with the prosecutors where she would testify against her own husband just to get a lighter sentence. Britney would go ahead and explain that her marriage was based off her abuse and that she wanted to get out of her marriage the whole entire time and that she felt that Jonathan was a way out. So she gave him all the evidence and the information needed to convict her husband, in which as part of a plea agreement they gave her 3.5 years for tampering with evidence, but 377 days of those were commuted due to time served, in which she only had to do part of that time, in which she was released on parole in April of 2022. Armando, on the other hand, was found guilty of first-degree murder and is serving life without parole, as well as an additional 45 to 135 years in prison for the abuse of his wife.